Welcome to Exceptionally Speaking, the podcast where we explore how to better understand and support exceptional learners. I'm Dr. Meryl, and each week I sit down with dedicated educators, parents, and advocates to share real strategies, inspiring stories, and moments of hope. If you're enjoying these conversations or learning something new, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today's episode features a powerful conversation with two incredible psychologists, Jennifer Mary and Dr. Angela Wall. Together, they bring decades of experience supporting students across educational settings, and they share a deep commitment to helping gifted and twice exceptional learners thrive emotionally. Jennifer is a nationally certified school psychologist with over 18 years of experience and a strong background in inclusive education. She's part of Denver Public Schools' Gifted and Talented team and brings a thoughtful, systems-focused perspective to her work. She recently started a private psychology practice for gifted and talented youth. Dr. Angela Wall has worked as a school psychologist for nearly 25 years, holds a PhD in school psychology, and recently added a clinical psychologist license to her impressive list of credentials. She now also works in private practice, supporting both children and adults. In this episode, we dive into the critical importance of social emotional learning for gifted students. We explore issues like emotional regulation, perfectionism, masking, and the stress that comes from being cognitively advanced but emotionally overwhelmed. Jennifer and Angela also share strategies for fostering growth mindsets, encouraging risk-taking, and advocating effectively for twice exceptional students, both in schools and at home. You can find more information about our guests at hex24press.com. Please enjoy Exceptionally Speaking with Jennifer Mary and Dr. Angela Wall. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Jennifer and Angela. I'm so excited to have you guys here with me on Exceptionally Speaking.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meryl, for having us.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to talk about our topic today and really engage in this conversation. But first, would love for each of you just to introduce yourselves to the audience.
Well, I'm Jennifer Mary. I'm a school psychologist in Denver Public Schools in the Gifted and Talented Department.
I'm Dr. Angela Wall, and I was a school psychologist in the public schools for almost 30 years. Now I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice, working with lots and lots of gifted kids on lots and lots of their social emotional issues.
Great. Well, so excited that you decided to spend some time with us today for this super important topic. I want to just really start for our listeners and ground us in social emotional learning itself. So would love to hear from you. What is social emotional learning?
I think the best way to describe social emotional learning is everything that kids need to know in order to live a good, healthy, productive, happy life. So we teach kids all kinds of things in school about math and science and reading and writing. But the key things that's going to make kids a happy and successful adult are sort of the more social, emotional types of things. So social emotional learning can look a lot of different ways. It can look like teaching kids skills in the classroom on how to recognize their emotions, regulate their emotions, solve problems. In private practice, where I am, it can look like individual instruction on just teaching kids how to recognize when they're getting excited or how to recognize when they're feeling anxious or depressed, and then how to cope with that. So it's kind of just learning skills to make their lives a little bit happier.
Friendship skills, I think,
Yes.
is really important, especially for gifted kids. Definitely problem solving, the self-regulation, time management, executive functioning even can go under SEL.
And a lot of parents and teachers may be aware that their school has like an SEL, social emotional learning curriculum, or way that the school approaches learning for all students at their school. But what is different or particularly important about SEL support for gifted students?
Well, I think sometimes people, when they learn that a child's gifted, they assume that they're advanced in all areas, that their emotional skills and their social development is equally as advanced as their ability to learn academically. And so you really have a lot of these gifted kids who really excel academically or excel, creatively. But their emotional skills may be way, way, way behind where they are cognitively. So in order to catch them up, using a social emotional curriculum or teaching them social emotional skills is absolutely critical. And I know you talk a lot about just intensity and synchronicity. And
the asynchronous development and just the expectation that they can meet that as well. They tend to be maybe friends with older kids. So then there's expectations that they're going to also be more emotionally mature, and they're not necessarily, even if they're friends with older kids, they could even be more immature. So with that asynchronous development, I think it can be something just that teachers and parents need to be able to help them navigate, especially when it comes to social interactions and friendships. They may need more support around that. And then, yeah, regarding overexcitabilities and intensities. And for those kids, they do need more support with like emotional regulation and handling frustrations and
Yeah. Well, the wonderful thing about giftedness is that kids get really interested and really excited about topics, and that's great. And what we try to do when we're working with gifted kids is cultivate all the great stuff and then kind of try to teach them the skills where those great things, like that real intensity and that intense curiosity about learning, where that might get in the way of social relationships. So sometimes when kids, and it's interesting, you said a lot of our gifted kids, some of them gravitate towards having older friends where they get kind of lost and they get kind of shy and they sort of mask their actual personality because they're trying to fit in. But a lot of times I see a lot of gifted kids hanging out with younger kids because their social skills aren't where they should be to just fit in with a typical group of kids at school. So those are the exact kinds of skills that if they're participating in a social emotional curriculum, and it's great if you can find one that's geared towards gifted kids, it's geared towards the specific needs of gifted kids, they can feel supported and also feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one that struggles with this. Because I think sometimes being gifted can be kind of lonely for a kid. And sometimes they really don't feel understood. And if you come at them and saying, just like all the other stuff you're learning, you can learn this stuff too. And then that's something that they can hold on to. I can learn how to be less awkward with my friends, or I can learn how to hang out with my friends. That's something they can really hold on to. And so I am all about it.
Yeah, I think just talking to kids, bringing it up, a lot of these kids, they're going to have more of a tendency to not ask for help because of the masking. So they tend not to ask for help. They're very good at navigating life without help. So I think if adults can bring that up, whether it's educators or parents, that's important. And I think, yeah, the loneliness, the isolation that can cause need for support for anxiety or depression, or that friendships.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about what masking is, if people haven't heard that term. I think in context, it makes sense, but what does that really look like?
Yeah, well, it can depend on the individual student, right? It could be like hiding your feelings. It can be hiding that you're bored. It could be hiding you're frustrated or anxious. I think a lot of kids that are gifted have anxiety, and so they're really holding that in all day and hiding that and trying to navigate that on their own. It could also just be like the social acceptance piece, trying to mimic their peers and language, thoughts, behaviors, just like whatever it is, even fashion, just trying to really fit in and masking their uniqueness, maybe. What else can masking be? It could be...
I think sometimes with gifted girls especially, they can mask how intelligent they really are.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They want to fit in, and especially, you get in middle school years, and fitting in is a lot more important than being, asking brilliant questions in class for them.
So. Trying to look normal and not just to really just fit in. The masking is just really just holding things in, right? Or not being your true authentic self. You had said something earlier in the conversation. Just if we as adults, whether we're educators listening right now or parents, if we can just approach this conversation with gifted kids, even upper elementary kids, I think it helps them be their true authentic self. And that's what's really important. And then helping them navigate so they do have a true friend. And even just one true friend is important for kids. So I was going to bring up too that the masking can lead to fatigue. It's draining. It can lead to stress. It can lead to anxiety. And as kids get older, even like high schoolers and beyond, like burnout. So I mean,
it's exhausting pretending to be something that you're not, and not feeling like it's okay just to be who you are. It's interesting when we talk about masking. I work a lot also with a lot of college-age kids who are extremely gifted, and it almost is in the reverse when I talk to some of my really bright college girls. they masking with them almost seems as though they're over intellectualizing everything because they want to give the presentation that they're so brilliant that they are pushing down any kind of emotions at all, which is equally as stressful. And so they want to come across as the brilliant one in the classroom. When they get to college, it almost like flips, is just an observation that I've made. And that's equally as exhausting because they're on all the time. They're not in tune to any of the just human emotions that bring us such joy in our daily lives. The over intellectualization is number one, and they need to learn that balance. And that too is just social emotional learning, how to learn that being emotional and having feelings and having anxiety is fine.
Right.
We all have anxiety.
Just what you're
you
saying,
know.
what you're talking about also just remind me of like the perfectionism, especially for girls, like, and just the impact of perfectionism on their mental health. And
Yes, I think that's a good point that both of you brought up. And I think maybe tied back to expectations as well around gifted students. I think, Angela, you brought up the idea of what people expect, how people expect gifted students to act when they see that their academic level or cognitive ability is so far beyond their peers, and then expecting that their social emotional ability would match that. More often than not, it doesn't, and that is to be expected. But would love to dig more into perfectionism and what would you see around perfectionism that maybe isn't expected? And what I mean by that is some people think of perfectionism as I need to get everything right all the time. But broadening that understanding, what else is perfectionism when we're talking about gifted students?
A gifted student might have a brilliant idea for a paper, and maybe they even have the organizational skills to do that paper, but they go over it again and over it again and over it again. You'd expect that they're gifted, they're going to rattle off that paper in no time, but they reread it and they find more citations. And every other kid is turning in maybe 3 citations or 4 because that's what the teacher asked. And when they finally turn in their paper, and it might be late, and they may not turn it in at all, they're going to have 25 citations. And it still is not going to feel right to them because it's not exactly perfect. I don't know. That pops into my mind because that was a conversation I had yesterday with a student.
And I don't know, this just popped into my head. It could even be the opposite, like motivation. So, right, like a kid that has that might even flip a 180 and look lazy and unmotivated and just, underachieving too, right? So that perfectionism, I mean, I think.
Well, underachieving is a whole, we
just
could talk for
reminded me
hours.
of the other side of- just remember the other side of that story where
Right.
they are doing that.
And I've also seen, and let me know if you guys have seen this as well, as gifted students being unwilling to try new things unless they know they're going to be very good at it.
That's a great point.
Oh my gosh. I was like,
That's a great point. Yeah.
never try anything and you miss out on so many things because it's anxiety. We're really the root cause of that's driving that is that anxiety. And I'm not going to try something new unless I know I'm going to be good at it.
Well,
It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing if you're not good at it.
and a lot of that comes from really well-meaning parents who give lots and lots of praise and encouragement for all these beautiful, wonderful, exceptional things their kids do, and not for just the effort that they're spending. And they don't give a lot of, it's nobody's fault. I'm a parent. I've made many mistakes like this in my past. Not giving enough encouragement for trying new things, but saying, oh my gosh, you did that. You got straight A's. That was the best paper in the class. Not giving enough encouragement or as much encouragement for just going for it, for jumping into a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Or for giving it a try, and encouraging them to go outside the box with things that they may not be good at, like physical things, or like reaching out to a new friend, or asking to join a basketball game, even if they're terrible at basketball. Parents really, impressing upon their kids that being a well-rounded person is so important as well. So, yeah.
And I wonder, because we often talk about, praising the process over the product, right? And having that being more emphasis on the process, or like you said, just trying it, not whether or not you were good at it, but praising just trying it. What kind of language would you guys suggest that parents and teachers can use to really better praise process versus product?
anything growth mindset, right? So you're not going to get it yet, or just
I like questions like, instead of that paper was great, period, tell me how you did that. Wow. Tell me your process. Just open-ended questions talk to me about school and what was the most fun you had? What was the craziest thing you did today? And how, a lot of how comes, and not just end product things, but tell me about that. Tell me about, oh, so those girls didn't let you sit at lunch? Tell me about that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it, instead of giving answers. Because if you're a parent who's always giving your kids answers, they're going to expect to know that they need to know answers all the time. But if you're a parent that allows them to question, and you're a parent that challenges them, I have confidence in you. How would you handle that? How did you manage to do that? Letting them explain. It deepens the relationship, right, with parents and kids.
Yeah,
Takes it
absolutely.
to another level.
and not to tie this all back, but to tie it all back. I just am sitting here thinking about how this all has to do with, the perfectionism and like trying new things. You brought that up, and that, GT kids or gifted kids are maybe hesitant, and definitely that is a factor. And it just ties back into that asynchronous development and having that psychoeducation for kids, that are gifted, kids with giftedness, having a chance to have that psychoeducation so that they understand about asynchronous development. Because for me, I'm not very athletic, so I didn't want to try anything unless I was going to just be able to be an all-star athlete. So I just didn't want to try a lot of things. Or I didn't even want to try, learning the piano, because I wanted to sit down and play Beethoven. And if I couldn't do that, I wasn't going to try it. It's embarrassing to play, what is it, Chopsticks? What are the first few songs we learn? And so I was like, I don't want to try it unless I'm like fluent in speaking Spanish right now. Like, I didn't want to learn things. I was anxious to try practicing in front of other people, anything in front of other people. So yeah, like, to the perfectionism piece, sometimes it is, giving them the space, even as educators, like, hey, do you want to go down to the other room, or go to another room and work on something? Or, as a parent, just letting them be in their bedroom, letting them try something, like walk out of the living room and just let them try it, or just removing the audience can sometimes help these kids. Or, making the environment, how can you adjust the environment so these kids will try new things? Because if they're hesitant to try these new things, they're just missing out on a lot. And that perfectionism and anxiety is just impacting their quality. Like you had started the conversation too about quality of life with SEL. And
Yeah. I notice sometimes, especially with the younger ones, I don't know, I seem to notice it more with boys. I don't know if there's a pattern, that they have these wonderful ideas and they're great writers, but their handwriting is terrible. It takes them a long time. And their brains are going like this, but their hands are functioning like any other 8-year-old, or maybe any other 6-year-old. And so they don't want to write. They just don't want to do it. So, another perfectionism thing. If they can't get down that beautiful story that's going on in their head, they don't even start.
Right. And so thinking about ways parents and teachers can support getting that story out, even could we get it out in a voice to text situation and have the student then physically write it from there? What other options can we provide instead of just, nope, you must write this right now. This is the only option. So.
And giving them, once again, back to social emotional learning, teaching them the skills to say, I'm not writing this because I don't like my handwriting, and feeling okay about asking questions, and feeling okay about saying, I'm not doing this perfectly. I've got these ideas. Can you help me? That's a big one for gifted kids, is giving them the confidence to ask for help when they need it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think too, educators and parents for sure can teach them, like, just to add on to that, just facing their fears. It's like really risk taking, facing fears, and like using that language with kids. I might fall, but I'm going to try this anyways. And everybody might laugh. Like, if you can model that, role modeling some of this as well, I think that can really help.
Well, lots of gifted kids have gifted parents who struggle with that as well.
That is,
so it's a family learning experience.
Right.
That's right.
And having gifted kids watch their really smart parents, try things and fail is pretty cool.
It's huge. Yeah. That's not to be understated. That is a really big deal.
And be able to like just handle it and show them how to handle it and navigate it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to talk more about the idea of increased sense of justice that we see within our gifted students. And, as a former classroom teacher, I often had gifted students who were misinterpreted as being combative. Or being incredibly argumentative, when truly the basis of that was a sense of justice. It may be like every day coming back from recess, we got to have a half an hour conversation about something that happened that was not okay on that micro level. But then we zoom out, and as students get older and understand what's going on in the world, can really be a heavy sense of justice in learning what's happening across the world that is not okay. So would love to know y'all's perspective on how better to support our students who really we see have that increased sense of justice.
I think you can really form a relationship with kids this way, by validating their feelings and having these taking the time as an adult to have these conversations with them.
And talking to them about, because once again, that's exhausting to have such a, gifted kids have this whole existential wanting to understand life going on. So it's pretty easy to understand why the sense of justice is so important. But it's exhausting, and it takes away from them building good relationships with kids. But once again, if you engage them where they're at, like, it seems like justice is so important to you. Let's talk about that. So instead of getting caught up in the content of who did what on the playground and this and that, let's talk about why that's important to you and take them in that direction. And that's going to help them grow. Solving their problems and saying, well, if you don't like to swing next to, Ashley, don't swing next to, that's not going to help them say, why is it important to you? And why is it important to you that I understand? Well, let's talk about that and talk about justice and talk about social justice and why that's important, and get them there and get them understanding that that's an important part of who they are and how that can be helpful and how that can be a problem on the playground. Get them there at the level that they're at.
And I just want to pause for a second. I think it's really important, really what you named, Angela, around approaching problem solving with a gifted student in a different way than you would a typical student, and not just going straight to, well, this is what I tell all students to do when they complain about that, but to really pause and try to listen to what that student's going through and zoom out into how we can approach this as a sense of justice, not just a one isolated issue on the playground.
And I like how you said that. Well, I think this is another chance for psychoeducation with kids, right? And teaching them that sense of justice is part of who they are and what that means, and how can we channel that from more of a overall viewpoint? Can we be doing some service learning projects or volunteering or advocating? And how do we advocate? How do we do public speaking? Like, what are some things that we can work with kids on to channel that energy? Debate team.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
It can be a strength. Yeah, it can be a strength.
Yes.
Yeah. So that it's maybe a strength and a passion that's channeled, so it's a little less draining for them. They may be masking to that individual student, may or may not be. I just think whatever we can do so they're not as drained and burned out or stressed would be, great, because we can think better when we're not stressed, right? And
I think a lot of times they don't understand that other kids are not as interested in that as they are. That other kids do not go out onto the playground and they're not quite as invested in justice aspect of social relationships or whatever, or grading than they are. And just that process of learning to be a little bit more sensitive to other people aren't interested in the same things that I am. And that's fine, but I need to know that, especially if I'm debating with, another student about something that may not be as important to them as it is to me.
Yeah. So in thinking about supports for students at school, I know you guys are both aware that in the gifted world, when we look at IEPs versus FIREs, we have a lot more students on FIREs than we do IEPs. And a lot of times we see that related to anxiety and support. So I'd love to hear what you guys have seen or experienced. What accommodations have been more successful for gifted students with anxiety, regardless if they have a 504, but what are some tactics that parents and teachers can think about when dealing with students with anxiety?
Well, I think some of that is just that educators have high expectations too. They're like, oh, this kid is gifted. They don't need breaks, but they do. That this is draining, right? We've talked about that throughout today. And so I think, having that space to give them breaks, having that trusted adult at school or a couple trusted adults is really important for these students. They oftentimes do relate better to adults anyway. So plugging them into trusted adults is a really good strategy for gifted kids, someone they can go talk to and giving them that time and space.
Sometimes testing in a quiet space. A lot of kids have real acute sensitivity to sound and to other things. These kids like to focus and concentrate. And so sometimes testing in a quiet setting or in a small group setting is going to be so much more helpful.
Especially if they feel pressure to perform on tests.
And to be the first one to turn their SATs in, which they would be, testing in a smaller setting might be particularly helpful. I have kind of mixed feelings about extended time for turning in assignments and things like that for exactly the reason I was talking about sooner. It's not always helpful. I mean, sometimes kids do take longer to complete assignments. Allowing them extra time, I haven't seen it be overly successful because once again, it gives them another, I hate to use the word excuse, but they'll tend to stretch it out for as long.
Another avenue at least to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point. Unless there's a learning disability tied to it, to really think hard about whether or not extra time is helpful and to engage the student if they did get extra time on how was that? Like, what was that process like for you? Was that better for you or not?
Yes, exactly.
And I do want to mention, in coordination with what you guys are talking about, back to masking and anxiety, that just because a gifted student looks like they're doing okay does not mean that they're doing okay. And to really just promote checking in with students, regardless of whether or not they have to really ensure that we're understanding how they're doing. Because on paper, it could look really great, but that may not be their experience in the classroom.
No, exactly.
I would just almost even say it's safe to assume at any given time throughout a school year that's a gifted student's not doing okay. And that might mean they're totally bored. It could be something as mild as that, or that they need help with something and they're not asking for help, or they feel isolated and they don't have even that one true friend. They may appear to have friends. And so, that can be very isolating. What does that mean? So I think they may have problems with like executive functioning and managing all of that. So I would almost say it's safer to assume that at some point throughout the school year, a gifted student, whether an elementary or secondary level, does need more like targeted specific types of support. And college students too, like you see college students and they need their own supports probably too, but
that's a great point. People just assume that because they're getting good grades, they're doing okay. And a lot of gifted kids are really lonely because it's hard for them to sit down and talk to a peer and say, I'm really struggling. And a friend might say, what are you struggling for? You don't even hardly have to study for school. You've got your whole life in line for you. And so just relating on an interpersonal level, which we know for kids, the best reliever of anxiety is just being able to talk to somebody, and being able to talk to like a bestie is everything. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that, and if you don't have that connection, you're handling all that anxiety yourself and you're pushing it down and pushing it down. And we all know that when you push down emotions and you push down your feelings and push down your feelings, it's going to come out somewhere, and it's going to come out somewhere that's not going to look good. So giving kids an outlet and an opportunity to be able to say, yes, I'm anxious, that's fine, and here's what I'm going to do about it is a gift to give our gifted kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would love to have kids be able to have a chance for more psychoeducation too.
Yeah.
Not just like specific supports for anxiety or executive functioning, for example.
Yeah. And I wonder about our twice exceptional students, which we've kind of been talking about already in this podcast, but to remind the audience, twice exceptional meaning you are gifted and then you have a 504 or an IEP, sometimes both. That's rare, but that can happen. And so what's been interesting is really the eligibility process. I think, as we've all seen through public education, sometimes there can be pushback on even wanting to evaluate students who are academically doing very well, but still may have a disability that qualifies for a 504 or even an IEP. So we'd love to know, what kind of advice would y'all give to parents who are thinking, maybe my child is twice exceptional. I know they're gifted, but how do I go about having that conversation with teachers and for them to take it seriously?
There's like the hidden ones, right? Like dyslexia, anxiety, and sometimes kiddos are really good at hiding that they're experiencing that. So I think we're doing better at recognizing it and talking about it. And
Right. And parents need to know that they have to advocate for their children. The teachers are going to come and go. People like me are going to come and go. We're going to come and go. The parents are with them forever. And if the parents know their child better than anybody else, and if they feel like, I mean, I've had people come to me in my practice for private assessment, and they said, she has a 4.0, and she's also up every night until 2 a.m. And that's not okay. They won't test her at school because she has a 4.0. There's something going on with her. And unfortunately, they're coming to me privately. Parents need to be assertive with schools. They need to reach out to the special ed teacher. If the special ed teacher is not responsive, and I hope this is okay to say, then they need to reach out to the director of special education and maybe CC some other people and say, can we at least have a conversation about this? Can we get together and can I talk to you about this? Otherwise, you guys that work in the public schools are exhausted. Their caseloads are massive. So unless a parent really advocates for the child and says, I know you guys are busy looking at the numbers, this does not seem like my kid needs some additional support. I'm here to tell you I have a body of evidence, and here it is, that I would like you to take a closer look at my child, and to not feel bad about that. You know, when I was in the public schools, you know, if I had a parent that was very serious and came to me and talked to me seriously, and this is what's going on, you better believe I'd listen to them. And then I'd be on their team and we'd be advocating together.
yeah, I mean, I was a building Section 504 coordinator for many, many years, and obviously worked in special education teaming as well. And I recommend that for parents of children with giftedness to really try to articulate what is going on. The better you can articulate what is happening and give examples of what you're seeing, I think it's easier for educators. Absolutely. It's way easier for educators to understand. Just saying my kid is struggling, but they have a 4.0 isn't going to turn the key. But the things that are going to turn the key to open up that door of accommodations, or even accommodations for college, or would be like giving specific examples, you know, that my kid is up till 2 a.m. This is what they're seeming to be. This is what I'm observing. This is what I'm seeing. This is what they're reporting. This is, you know, could we try some of, and then you mentioned body of evidence, even just working with that one teacher. I'm thinking like when I worked at a middle school, it was all highly gifted kids, you know, you don't have to go right off the bat and say, I want a 504 for my kid, or I want an IEP for my kid for dyslexia, for example, or anxiety or something like that, or even ADHD and some of these things. And so working with that one teacher that parent can connect with. There are teachers out there that are more willing to work with you as a parent, or even a school psychologist. Like, hey, could we just try these few things? It's a softer approach, but what you're doing, you mentioned it, what you're really doing is building a body of evidence and moving forward with evidence. And the body of evidence is saying, hey, my son or my daughter, my child needs to be evaluated. Like, there's now evidence of a potential disability, and I'm now officially requesting an evaluation for that disability.
You're doing your own intervention and you're documenting your intervention and that it works, and then you're presenting it.
Yes.
Good point.
And that's really like, as a school psychologist, I will say that's like 50% of the evaluation. If everybody could practice this way, you know, building that body of evidence and showing that this is what's going on, it just, that's like manifestation of like the disability right there, and what are supporting it. And it's a golden thread throughout. So then at that point, we can start putting in place what's already in place in the child's plan. But at that point, now I can start thinking of recommendations that may be, meaningful recommendations and ideas beyond what's already in place to help improve that child's life. Even beyond that, what's already in place. So, I mean, we're giving away a secret, I guess, but.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point.
That's great. That's great. I've never,
And I just think a lot of these are hidden, right? Like dyslexia is very hidden disabilities. So it's tricky because I think a couple decades ago, a lot of these things weren't getting identified. And we are doing, I think, a better job at identifying that these things are happening. These kids need support.
Yeah. And I think it's really behind what you both are saying is to not give up when you know that there's something going on different with your child, to figure out who you can partner with, who is listening to you, who is really willing to take you seriously. And if you get a no from one teacher, to move on to the other teacher. And if you need to elevate it, because your child does have the right to get their needs met at school. So I think that's really important and valuable information for sure.
Not to plug it, but reach out to a school psychologist. We're trained in this. I mean, we really are. And if you reach out and get their ear in time, like, you can articulate some things. I think that can really help is, if you can't find a teacher that you can connect with and you're struggling for that, or an administrator, even sometimes it can be hard to get them to understand. I think finding a school psychologist they're trained in these things. So I think there's at least one person, even the school nurse in the building, that a parent can try to connect with and get a common understanding. That way they can advocate for their child. And if I think helping be a thought partner and really saying like, hey, could we try this instead? And helping everything's something to figure out and problem solve. So being a thought partner on problem solving that and advocating, and really just more than anything too, for secondary level, getting the student involved.
Exactly.
With that.
I was going to say, yeah. The smartest person in the room is probably your child. So ask them. What do you think might help?
Yeah. Yeah. And asking that. But for the younger kids, I've worked a lot with the younger kids. It's okay to be that parent, and it's okay to advocate, because these are big things. These are heavy things that are inside and it's your child. So
yeah, and the sooner that the gifted child can understand what supports help them, the better that they will be able to advocate for themselves as they go to college and move on into the workplace on what they need as well. So I think that's super helpful. So as we wrap up, I love to ask all my guests to leave us just with a little bit of hope. So what are you seeing that's hopeful in the realm of social emotional learning and support for our gifted students?
Well, I'm just hopeful because I feel like we're doing a better job at identifying disabilities, hidden disabilities for kids that do have a 4.0. But I think we're just doing a better job in general of working with gifted students and providing them social emotional learning through that's individualized for gifted students about the psychoeducation piece. And I think I have hope that we can continue to do better job at that, that parents can be a part of that as well, and that it's all of our, shared responsibility to help children. So,
yeah, I agree. Just talking about it like we're doing today and increasing awareness that, giftedness is, excelling academically does not necessarily mean that they're at the same level emotionally, and just recognizing that and talking about it is great. And as far as hopefulness, gifted kids are great. I mean, they can be funny and wonderful and full of wonderful ideas, and they can be good friends, and they can blossom and have wonderful social lives, and they can try new things. We just need to give them the legs to do that. Parents, if you have a gifted kid, rejoice in that. I mean, it can be a little intimidating at times, but they're wonderful to work with, and they can turn into the most wonderful adults.
My hope is just that they can be their true, authentic self.
Yes, that is true.
Whatever we can do to reduce stress so they can be that full potential, that would be great.
And I really appreciate the work that both of you have done, just really your life's work in supporting students in this way. And as they become adults, even more important. So really appreciate the work you're doing. If any of our listeners are interested in reaching out to Jen or Angela, please check out hex24press.com, where you can check out more links to their information. So thank you both so much for this lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. This episode of Exceptionally Speaking is brought to you by Hex 24 Press, where education meets imagination. I founded Hex 24 Press in 2024 to uplift educator voices and provide a publishing home for myself and other educators to bring our work into the world. You can find more information about today's guests, including links to their resources and services, at hex24press.com. Thank you for supporting educators, independent creators, and small business. We're so glad you're here.